bring up this report from the Post-Millennial. Key Kamala staffers weren't aware of Tim Walz's false claims until they were made public. It was reported that, quote, key members of Harris's circle weren't aware of some of the inaccurate statements from Walz, quote, until they became public. Kamala Harris's vice presidential running mate, Tim Walz, has claimed that he carried weapons in combat that he and his wife conceived using IVF, claimed that he was a command sergeant major in the National Guard when he was actually reduced to a master sergeant when he retired. And it turns out that some of Harris's campaign's key staffers weren't aware of any of these things until they were made clear. Walz's false statements have ranged from his background in the National Guard to other facets of career, such as when he claimed to be teaching students in Hong Kong while the Tiananmen Square massacre took place. According to news from Politico, quote, key members of the Harris circle weren't aware of some of the inaccurate statements from Walz until they became public. Many of the issues were not raised, quote, despite vetting process for Harris's VP pick.
Is his name even Tim Walz?
They're not
At
sure.
this point, I have to ask.
Also, someone's job is to professionally vet these candidates.
Right.
You know, I will say some of these claims he did sort of make after. Like if you're trying to play devil's advocate in favor of the staffers, maybe a couple of them, I don't know. There's actually really no defending this. And it comes a couple weeks after this report from the New York Post. It says, Kamala Harris says insomnia hit after Biden dropped out. Quote, she was sleep deprived the day they picked Tim Walz. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it's basically Kamala Harris was saying, from the time the president called me and told me he wasn't running, I mean, it was just like everything was in speedy motion, and I was not sleeping well. She told the basketball star she's appearing on the All Smoke podcast. Quote, and then that one morning, I had, I don't know, a few hours sleep, and I like to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
I just got up. She said, I was like, so I just went out and got a pork roast and started marinating it.
What?
For her very Jewish husband.
Did she really just see what really happened was?
She got a pork roast for her very Jewish husband.
As a Jew, I take offense to the fact that he's even married to her. I do, when things aren't a meritocracy with the left and when they pick people, it's all about identity politics. And so it's like giving the bid to the lowest bidder for a government contract. You're going to get the worst. And so because nothing with the left is about meritocracy or who's qualified, you end up in this situation where you have Kamala Harris, who isn't qualified, picking Walz, who isn't qualified, and that's how we end up where we're at right now. And that's just something that I find odious with the left, is because it's all about, your appearance and things like that. It's always going to end badly, and I feel like the Republicans, for the most part, tend to put the most competent people up there. And we're also seeing it with FEMA and Pete Buttigieg, who was chosen because of his sexual orientation instead of his competency. And so things start playing out like this, where it's just disaster after disaster, and I think it's totally predictable.
Did you always feel this way, that identity politics was leading Democratic staffing choices, or is this something you feel more recently?
I remember it with staffing choices. I would say I've only been cognizant of it, in the last 4 or 5 years. But I think we're definitely going down a road where it keeps getting more and more absurd. I mean, you look at the NASA gentleman, or maybe it was non-binary, who was stealing people's luggage, and that turned into a huge fiasco for the Biden administration. Very embarrassing.
I can't help but feel like he has my luggage, because I lost a bag that year and it was at that airport.
It probably was him.
You have to stalk his Instagram, see
He
if
was
he's posting photos in your clothes.
charged of nuclear or something, right?
Zara in there.
But even if you look at the TikTok influencers that the Biden administration hires, they're just, what they have going on, it's just pretty embarrassing. So yes, I would say it's definitely gotten worse, and I think it's only going to continue to get worse. And it's one of the things that I loathe the most about the left, is that, it's not based on character. It's not based on things that as a country we've always valued. It's now just based on what's your orientation, what's your skin color, and it's just so insulting, and it leads to results like this, where you have Tim Walz claiming he was at Tiananmen Square. It's just really bizarre. I don't know how more people aren't upset about it and offended by it.
The worst part about this with Kamala saying I only had a few hours of sleep, does she know the job she's running for? Because sometimes you have to make quick decisions, and they have to be good decisions. That's the job she's running for. She's telling us, well, I didn't really know what I was doing. I kind of just, picked him, I guess.
I think it's pretty clear that, the current administration is more it's more a committee-run situation, and I think that's not going to change should Kamala Harris actually, win and get into office. There again, this speaks to the fact that there is no one held accountable. If you have a situation where there are multiple people that are doing the job as opposed to one person, it's much easier to go ahead and just pass the buck, and it's much easier for other people around them to say, well, we don't really know who we can hold accountable. When it's just one person and it's clearly the decision is made by the executive, then it's very easy to be like, well, you're the one who made the call. And yet you've got Kamala Harris saying that she was the last, I forget what for the Afghanistan, she was the last one in the room. And what happened? Nothing has changed. There has been no one held accountable for a totally botched withdrawal. Completely and totally botched. And the reason it was botched is because they just didn't want to do what Donald Trump did. Like, they came into office and they just wanted to change everything that the Trump administration had, whether it was good policy or bad policy. It was just like, if it's Donald Trump's policy, change it because we're not Donald Trump. And we have seen significant negative repercussions because of that.
It was very spiteful. I mean, it's really, we are not Donald Trump and we're going to do all these things, especially when quietly there were either some things they left in place or they reversed. Like, famously, Trump called out you're saying my tariffs are bad, but the tariffs are still in place. I think
the policy on the cost of insulin. Trump changed it. Trump had a policy in place that was working. They changed it and then changed it back. The whole talking about the border, they let the border go for 3 years before they even mentioned it. There's no problem at the border. No problem at the border. No problem at the border. 10 million people came into the United States, unaccounted for. I think
there wasn't a problem until Texas tried to fix it.
Yeah, 300,000 people that are actually criminals that have some kind of criminal record, and I think it was like 10 or 15,000 people that were murderers. It's just unconscionable. It's absolutely unconscionable.
And when Texas tried to fix it, they fought them. I mean, it was amazing.
Sued them for it,
Right. It was amazing watching this fight over the buoys in the Rio Grande Valley, which they tried initially to say, it's an environmental issue. Actually, just kidding. You don't have the authority to put them there. Actually, we don't want you to do that. I mean, I thought it was one of Greg Abbott's best moments when he was like, Texas has an obligation to secure its border for its people.
It's like the government was just going around hypothetically lighting fires and then saying, no, you can't put that out. We light another one over here.
But Kamala Harris is saying, I'm the change candidate. Even though I'm currently part of this administration, things will change under me. I mean, this doesn't seem to be a winning
disavowed
mantra.
Her pick for vice president. Is she going to pick somebody else now?
Well, and when you saw in the lead up to the debate, there were a couple stories came out. Even though he said he was a really great debater, that's what Minnesotans have said they had known him as. That Walz was having panic attacks, that he was really nervous. I mean, there's obviously a relationship between the DNC and the media, but there were clearly attempts with Harris and Walz before both debates to lower the bar, and I find that interesting. So not only can we hold you to a high standard, we can't even hold you to your word, and also we can't even hold you to your promises because you won't tell us what your policies are.
Yeah, it's hard to say that you're going to be a solution to all the problems when you're the genesis of all the problems. And again, she's just backed herself against the wall with this, but, her feet aren't held to the fire by the media or the moderators. And they're really just the fact that they went at Vance and said, so are you going to deport the people that are here? What is your plan? Why was there not a question to Kamala, to Walz about why there were all of these people that were here illegally? And they did the same thing in the Trump-Harris debate. They asked Trump, so what are you going to do? Are you going to deport people? Are you going to be knocking on doors? Not one question to the person who got us in this situation, Kamala Harris, about why did you let all of the people in here so that Trump is forced to deport them? And again, it's just egregious and shameful, and it's just so blatantly obvious. The media doesn't even try to hide that they're asking these loaded, biased questions, and it makes it so much easier for Walz and Harris, and yet Walz still managed to completely fumble the ball, look incompetent, despite getting all of these assists from the two female moderators.
Do you think Walz is someone voters respond to, because there are polls that indicate that he's likable, right? They feel like he is personable, that there's something about him in interviews, and I feel like that's not the case with Kamala Harris. She is specifically unpersonable. On the other hand, he is a liar. He doesn't tell the truth. He gets caught regularly. Is his personality enough for people to get past the falsehoods?
I don't like his personality. Me.
I don't either, but that's what the polls say.
Personally, he makes my skin crawl. He makes me feel uncomfortable just looking at him, and his eyes bulging out of his head, and his gesticulations, and his movements, and his shoulder movements. He makes me very uncomfortable. So I don't know the type of people he's putting at ease or making comfortable, but I'd almost want to question them.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't know if they should be voting, but he makes me really uncomfortable, and everyone else here, I don't know. Do you guys feel the same?
The way he enters a stage, the sashaying he does, no one walks like that.
I watched a 17-minute speech he gave once, and it was like hard to watch it.
Well, when did he give the speech?
I don't know. I think it was his acceptance speech, and I was just like, this is really hard to watch. I don't know why. Just a very uncomfortable guy to watch.
He's an odd guy. There was, and again, because he often gets caught misspeaking, and that's complete quotes for everybody who's just listening and not watching. He gets caught, and sort of everyone lets it go. Some people will start to acknowledge it, not really. But it makes it so whenever he gives a personal anecdote, I feel like we all have to be like, somebody double check that. And I hate to say this, I really do. But he gave that story during the debate about his 17-year-old son witnessing a shooting at a community center. And that's horrible. That's awful. But because it's Tim Walz, I find myself having to be like,
I was thinking the immediately same thing.
You were?
Yeah. I felt bad about it.
Do voters want this for 4 years? It doesn't matter, because Mike Pence kind of faded to the background. Kamala Harris faded to the background. Will Tim Walz just fade to the background if Harris is elected?
I don't think it matters, because I don't think people vote for the vice president. Historically, people don't vote for the vice president. They vote for the top of the ticket. And I think that, regardless of how poorly or well Walz does at a debate, I think that people are going to look at Kamala Harris's record as the vice president, even though the vice president is largely a powerless, position. They can look at her voting history in the Senate. They can look at how she behaved as the AG in California, the policies that she's endorsed, and you can see that everything that she has ever believed has changed because those policies are significantly unpopular in the United States with the people as it is. So I don't think that Walz matters much.
Walz is the opening band for the ticket concert of the person you actually want to see perform. Like the VP, people don't really know. They don't really care about. They don't. People who are deeply entrenched in politics can want to watch the VP debates, but I guarantee it was already 10% of the viewership of Trump and Kamala.
They're looking to see if that person has a future.
Well, and historically, the VP position has been just a figurehead, as you pointed out earlier. It's just a figurehead position. There's not much substance to it. But occasionally, as history has shown, the VP has to step in, like with LBJ, and now we saw it with Kamala Harris. So I would argue that the VP position actually is very important because if something happens to the president, obviously they're next in line. So I think we do need to vet these people and look with a lot of scrutiny at who they are. And just watching kind of Walz's track record in Minnesota, I don't think it's very good, and he's not the type of person that I would want as a leader. I think he says and does a lot of things because it's virtue signaling, and I think like most people on the left, he lives to virtue signal, and I just inherently don't trust people that go around virtue signaling all the time, and he's the best of them.
Thanks for watching this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. on this channel. Subscribe, and we'll see you all there.